And hello, it is SimpforTyrie here for another episode of the podcast. I couldn't get one up last week because I didn't have the time to, but here I am doing one this week. So, in the podcast today, I'm going to go over my 2021 NFL predictions, talk about some edge prospects that I was watching tape of, give my thoughts on them, like what are their strengths, or their weakness, upside, and whatnot. Then I'm gonna and then after the edge prospects, I'm gonna talk about why I don't think Gus Malzahn, the new UCF head coach and former Auburn coach, isn't a very good coach, and why I think he could potentially hurt the development of Dylan Gabriel as a quarterback. Then after that, I'm going to get back into the NFL talk. I'm going to talk about the Xavier Howard situation, then start a new segment called Blind Darts, which I want to do like every once in a while. It's basically where I make blind predictions in the future that probably aren't going to be right, but something that very well could happen, if that makes sense. With that being said, let's get into the video. Wait, before we get into the video, actually, my Twitter is SimpforTyrie, and my Twitch is Panda is the One. I stream maybe like once a week on Twitch. Now we're going to get into the video. And we're going to start with the 2021 NFL predictions. Coming in, the topic suggestion coming in from How About Fitty on Twitter. He follows me on there. He's one of the more frequent interactions. But he wants me to talk about my 2021 predictions. So I'm going to. My Super Bowl matchup prediction is going to be Chiefs-Rams. And I'm going to predict the Chiefs to win. I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. Now I'm going to talk about my division winners. I have the Rams winning the NFC West. NFC North, I'm going to say Packers if Rodgers plays. If he doesn't, the Vikings play. Or the Vikings win it, actually. Then the NFC South, I have the Buccaneers winning the division, obviously. Then the NFC East, I have Dallas. The AFC West, I have the Chiefs. AFC North, I have the Ravens. AFC South, I have the Titans. And AFC East, I have the Bills. The team I predict to be the most disappointing this year is the Miami Dolphins. Let me be clear. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have a great coach. But their offense, I have legitimate questions about. I think if Tua can't improve from what he looked like last year, he's gone. He was terrible last year. People want to defend him badly, but he was one of the least accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, had an astronomical amount of turnover-worthy plays, and had really poor anticipation. It was like once the Broncos game hit, he just started regressing. Honestly, looking pretty poor. And I think if he can't get better than that, he's being replaced. But the two I think we're going to get is like a borderline top 20 quarterback. Because I think the offensive line, the situation that is right now, is a mess. Austin Jackson is an athlete who can't really play football. Liam Eichenberg is a good tackle, but I think because of his lack of length, he's going to really struggle as a rookie. And I think it's very likely he ends up as a guard in the future because of his length. Then center and left guard look really poor. Matt Skura is not good at football, simply put. Ask any Ravens fan what they think of him. They'll say the exact same And everyone's so excited about the Jalen Waddle pick, but can Tua even hit Jalen Waddle? Jalen Waddle's a deep threat. Tua cannot throw deep. I think even at Tua's best case scenario, he probably won't be able to throw deep very well because he has a severe lack of arm talent and was never that good of a downfield thrower. Now, the team that I think is going to be the most surprising this year, I've talked about the Jets, I've talked about the Bengals. I've kind of backtracked on the Bengals one because I didn't realize how much of a gauntlet of a schedule they have. They have a really bad offensive line, and they play so many great defensive lines. So I backtracked on that one, but I think in 2022 they could be good. It'll depend on how they fix their O-line and whatnot. But the surprising team of the year that I'm going to go with is going to be the Patriots. I see so many people saying the Dolphins are better than them. I don't get it. The Patriots have a better defense all around. They have a significantly better offense. The Patriots flat are a better team than the Dolphins on all levels. And I think because of their offensive line, they're going to be able to beat down on teams. They're going to run all over you, and you're not going to be able to put points up on their defense. That's also being coached by the greatest coach of all time in Bill Belichick. I think they're going to give the Bills a run for their money on the division crown. And I think they'll probably be one of the highest wildcard teams. Or they might have a better record than some of the division winners as a wildcard team. And then my next prediction, MVP, I'm going to go with Josh Allen. Every year he's been in the league, he's developed. Last year we saw him develop into an MVP candidate. I expect him to continue his development this year and win the MVP. I think he's going to make even less poor decisions than he did last year. I think most of his turnover-worthy plays last year were just on like 50-50 balls. I think he's going to be incredible this year. I think he could have like a 2018 Mahomes-like season. Then my Defensive Player of the Year pick, Aaron Donald. I'm not going to bet against Aaron Donald. He's quite possibly the greatest defensive player ever. I don't know what else to say. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I'm actually going to go with Zach Wilson. I think he's going to lead a somewhat surprising Jets team to like a 7-10 or 8-9 record. And have like somewhat of a similar season to what Justin Herbert had. Where he's just launching bomb after bomb, making incredible play after incredible play. I think he's going to be incredible. Simply put, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a really shaky start to the season because he's a little over-aggressive over the middle of the field, which will probably end up resulting in a lot of turnovers early on. But I think Zach Wilson's going to be a lot more steady throughout the season and win MVP over Lawrence. Or not MVP, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Then Defensive Rookie of the Year. This kind of plays into my Patriots Surprising Team of the Year. I'm going to go with Christian Barmore. I think he's going to be the best pass rusher the Patriots have had in the building in 10 years. And when he landed with Bill Belichick, that was insane. I had him as a top 10 player in this draft. That was a really hot take, but he is really good at playing 3 technique. While he may not be that good of a run defender, Bill Belichick knows better than anyone how to use a player and hide his weaknesses. I expect Barmore to have possibly a 10.5 sack season with 50 or 60 pressures. He's going to be insane. I think he's going to be Chris Jones. So now the next segment is going to be the edge rushers, and it's going to be, well, hold on, just had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but the next segment is going to be about the edge rushers, and it's my number one edge rusher is going to be Kayvon Thibodeau. Is this that much of a surprise? I think he's a comparable prospect to Chase Young, but I think Thibodeau, with another year of development, very well could end up as a better prospect than Chase was. And Chase was one of the best pass rush prospects of the decade. Maybe, or arguably even all time. I think Thibodeau could be up there with like Young, Garrett, Clowney, elite all-time edge prospects. I think it's a legitimate chance to go number one overall. Depends on if the Texans end up with the first pick. Because I think if the Lions end up with the first pick, they're not going Spencer Rattler no matter what. And I don't know if Sam Howell's number one worthy. I've talked on Twitter that I think Malik Willis will probably end up going number one overall, but I don't know if I'm going to predict that right now. And that leaves Kayvon Thibodeau. The Lions have not much off the edge. Thibodeau would step in and make that pass rush elite. You'll elevate Onwuzurike, Aleem McNeil, Deshaun Hand, Trey Flowers, if they end up keeping him and not cutting him. But he can make that pass rush incredible. And it would really help schematically because the system they want to run is the 3-4 cover 4 split safety, which is one of the most popular schemes in the NFL right now. And that scheme really relies on having an elite pass rush. Thibodeau could help them maybe not become an elite pass rush, become definitely a great one. But for why I think Kayvon Thibodeau is so good is he is ridiculously powerful for a sophomore. He just bulldozes people. He's versatile he's versatile as well. He could play off the edge. He could play a 4-tech. He could play a 3-tech. Oregon uses him everywhere. He's extremely athletic as well. And he has great bend. I forgot to add that, but only like one knock, if you will, I have on him, which isn't even much of a knock, to be honest. He just doesn't have elite or great finesse to his game. With another year of development, I think he could get there pretty easily. But we need to see that development first. So now, here's possibly my hottest take so far. It's up there with like Keaton Slovis or Grayson McCall, even though McCall doesn't look as hot of a take right now. But my number 2 edge rusher is George Karlaftis. And right now it's not much of a hot take to say he's the second best edge rusher in the draft. A lot of people really like him, but I'm not sure if there's anyone that likes him as much as I do. I turned on the tape today. I wanted to do some last prep work before I made this podcast, talking about these edge rushers. And I had heard good things about Karlaftis, but also heard bad things, so I just turned on the tape to get my opinion. First play I see, I just watch him long arm an edge, or long arm, it was Alaric Jackson, just walk him back and get a pressure, almost a sack. First play I saw of Karlaftis. Oh, I didn't realize I have a spelling error on the graphic right there. Oh well. But Karlaftis, the first play I saw him, he just long arms Alaric Jackson, walks him back for a pressure. And the next play, I see him line up at 3-tech, bull rush the guard into the quarterback and nearly get a sack. First 2 plays. I think his power is like right there with Thibodeau. I think he's an elite pass rush prospect right there with Thibodeau. Has elite get off and explosiveness. He's incredibly powerful. He's versatile. He can play 3, 4, 4i, 2 technique. He plays everywhere. And he's right now listed at 6'4", 270. Probably 6'3", 270. Might end up beefing up to like 275. Right now, I compare him to DeMarcus Lawrence. One thing I forgot to mention with Thibodeau as well is that he's a phenomenal run defender. But that also applies to Karlaftis. He's dominant against the run. He rarely gets moved. He will stand up linemen. They're not moving him. He's a brick wall against the run. He has, like I already said, he has incredible powerful. And one thing that he has that Thibodeau doesn't is great finesse. But what I think keeps him below Thibodeau is that he's smaller and doesn't have as much room to grow physically. As like with Thibodeau, he's like 6'6", 250. Thibodeau could get significantly more powerful for a guy who's already unbelievably powerful. I just would take the upside over Thibodeau. Well, the upside of Thibodeau over Karlaftis. But the gap between Karlaftis and Thibodeau is not that big. His game against Iowa, he was unblockable. No matter who he was lined up on, he was dominating them. It was unbelievable. He took over that game against Iowa and was dominating everyone. It was unbelievable. Now, the next two guys I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The next edge rusher I'm going to talk about is Zach Harrison. He's another great edge prospect, but he's really refined and has a lot of pass rush moves. But he just isn't as athletic as Karlaftis and Thibodeau. He also doesn't have as much room to grow physically. But I think you can draft him top 20. You know you're getting potentially a number 1 pass rusher if he can continue to refine his craft, which is already incredibly refined. But with his physical stature, he could add even more power. Which if you could add more power, he's terrifying. I think at the worst, you're getting a high-end number 2 pass rusher with potential to become a number 1. He reminds me somewhat of a Jadeveon Clowney, which is at the worst a really good run defender, but doesn't offer a ton as a pass rusher. Which Harrison, I think, could end up being a better pass rusher than Clowney, but pass rushing isn't really his strength right now. I don't think he's an elite athlete either. He's more of a good to solid, or good to slightly above average athlete. Now, the next two edge rushers I'm going to talk about, I'm going to kind of cluster together, but I would say they're in a way gaps. Well, there's a big gap between the two, but they're similar stylistically. So this one's Nick Benito. PFF just loves raving about him. I think he's solid. He's incredibly athletic, but he's just not refined. He really only has good inside moves and bend, but he does flash great spin moves and clubs and rips, but just has a long way to go. And he's not that great of a run defender because he's a lot smaller. But he actually held his own somewhat, but still has a long way to go. Probably will never be that good of a run defender, but could be solid. I think his upside is incredible. I think is a better prospect than what Odafe Owe was, because he's more refined than Owe and probably even more athletic. Maybe not as big, but just has more refinement, is more athletic. And Owe went 31st overall, I think it was. with the pick the Ravens got from the Chiefs. So then, and then the next one is Drake Jackson. He's going to be another USC prospect that I'm brutal on. To be completely honest, he's just an athlete with length. Like, against UCLA, he got mauled in the run game. The only time that he wasn't being blocked is when he got an unblocked. Like, he offers no pass rush moves at all. He's fine, or like, he has some flashes against the run, but it's far from good. Most of those flashes are because he has really good length. But, like I said, he's just an athlete. He has no pass rush moves, and just good bend. I think he's somewhat similar to like Joshua Kindo in the draft this year, who was really big like Drake Jackson and incredibly athletic. Just has absolutely zero skill. But the one thing that makes Jackson different from Kindo, to his credit, is that he uses his length so much better, and that Jackson played in a 3-4 when he should be in a 4-3. I don't think he's a first-round prospect, to be honest. I would say the same thing about Benito. I'd probably put Drake Jackson in more like 3rd to 4th round, to be completely honest. Because he just has so far to go. Then the next segment is like my Gus Malzahn, Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel segment. We all know Bo Nix for being garbage, but I've kind of somewhat defended Bo Nix because so many of his stupid and bad plays that he had with Auburn is that he's running from a terribly schemed up pass protection. Gus Malzahn is terrible at scheming up pass protections. So often would his offensive line not know who to block. And like they had terrible spacing between linemen and terrible size of play. They allowed so many free rushers onto Bo Nix because they couldn't scheme up a pass protection. Like, if you want to see this more in depth, go look at J.T. O'Sullivan QB School. His, I think, it was his most recent Bo Nix video, where he's just like, Nix does not look good, but I can't really take much away when this offense is so terribly schemed up. And I think this could hurt Dylan Gabriel's development as a quarterback because Gabriel isn't a very refined passer at all. But I would say he's more refined than Nix. But I think Gabriel, if he's going to be under constant pressure, that scares me. Especially for a guy who doesn't have that great of an arm. But he has a very good arm. I just think he'll really struggle when he's always under pressure, just like Nix was. But I think he will probably end up being better than Nix. I just don't think, but to sum up what I've said, I don't think Gus Malzahn is a good coach from an X's and O's perspective. He's actually a really good recruiter, but that's about it. But I think he was one of the biggest reasons why Dylan Gabriel has been such a big bust as a 5-star recruit. When Nix is constantly dealing with unblocked pressure, his linemen aren't knowing what to do, there's terribly schemed up routes. It makes it impossible for Nix to develop. But to defend Malzahn here, it doesn't help when Nix is making idiotic throws. But I feel like if Nix was gifted a better situation where he could actually get if he could actually get decent pass protection, he could have worked out. What I think ends up happening is Nick's probably ends up transferring. The new coach for Auburn, I can't remember his name, is known to prefer a pro-style quarterback. They got TJ Finley, and I think they're going to have somewhat of preference towards Finley. And I see Nick's ending up in the transfer portal. For his sake, I hope he doesn't end up replacing Dylan Gabriel as a transfer at UCF. But we'll see how it ends up happening. Now, one of the last segments here is going to be the Xavier and Howard situation. This topic comes from Ethan Arco5 on Twitter, asking me to talk about the Xavier and Howard situation. I have a pretty simple stance on this, and that's he's being a diva. He's complaining about the other corner on the team, Byron Jones, making slightly more than him. And he's only 1 year into his contract, and he has 4 years left, I think. He's being a baby. And if I'm the Dolphins, simply, I don't pay him. That's a terrible precedent to set. Howard has absolutely zero leverage here. And I think he probably ends up playing and doesn't get the contract. And, Howard, I think, is probably going to end up regressing, and I feel like he might know that. And that's why he's holding out now rather than later. Corner is an incredibly volatile position. You're going to get beat. Some seasons you don't get beat much, but then the next you'll get beat a ton. For example, Jalen Ramsey in 2016, 17, and 18 was elite, and then in 2019 he took a step back, because at some point you're going to end up getting beat, but then this year he took a step back up. It's a volatile position. And I think Howard's probably going to have somewhat of a regressing season, where he's not as good as he was last year. And paying him sets a precedent that, Jerome Baker, who just signed an extension, he should sit out, he should hold out next year and demand a new contract 1 year in. Paying Howard could set this organization back years, because players are just going to be able to sit out and demand new contracts whenever they want. And they'll have little to no leverage because they had paid Howard. So in the last segment, is what I call blind darts, and that's where I basically make a few blind predictions in the future as to things that could happen. And I haven't done one on Twitter in a while, but I'm going to do it here. So the first blind dart I'm going to throw is, in 2025, I think it is that the 2022 class is eligible for the draft, or 2026. Quinn Ewers and Cade Klubnik. Quinn Ewers is the 1,000 rated recruit committed to Ohio State. Cade Klubnik is the 4-star recruit committed to Clemson, who I think is a really good quarterback who's being really underrated for not much of a good reason. But I think those two quarterbacks are going to go on to be like a Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota quarterback duo of two quarterbacks that should be the first and second pick. This is a blind prediction that I'm making. So much could happen between now and 2025. And then the next one I'm going to throw is DJ Uiagalelei is a better quarterback prospect than Trevor Lawrence. And that's because I think the physical upside of Uiagalelei is possibly the highest we've ever seen. He's really athletic and has the strongest arm I've ever seen. He can throw 85 yards effortlessly. He has I think his arm might be better than Josh Allen. It's that good. And then the next dart I'm going to throw is, Let me think for a second. I'm kind of coming up with this on the fly. Justin Fields, in his second year, has one of the best second halves of the season we've ever seen. Where he'll like be solid in the first half of the season, then the second half come on and be like an MVP candidate in the second half, similar to like what Josh Allen did. I don't know if this is going to happen. I would kind of doubt that it does, but it's, like I said, a blind prediction. And then I guess one that I could technically call a blind prediction is that Trey Lance is going to be the best quarterback out of the draft because he's with Kyle Shanahan. But quite a lot of people have actually said that take. It's not that crazy to say. The next one I'm going to go with is Kyle McCord, 2021 5-star commit to Ohio State. He's already enrolled at Ohio State. It sounds like he's not going to win the job this year. I'm going to predict that in 2022, when Quinn Ewers arrives at Ohio State, Ewers takes the job, and both him, or I'm going to, for the sake of this, I'm going to say just Kyle McCord. He ends up transferring in, has a Justin Fields-esque type of college career where he loses out on the starting job, transfers somewhere else, and emerges as a phenomenal quarterback prospect. I'm going to predict that same career trajectory with Kyle McCord, but instead he's transferring from Ohio State. And that's going to do it for the podcast. One thing I want to say is that my next video is going to come out, I think, on Tuesday. And it's going to be a mock draft for 2022. And one last thing is, my Twitter is at SimpforTyrie, and my Twitch is Panda is the one. With that being said, thanks for watching. Goodbye.